The honeymoon suite gleamed like something from a movie. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling. Big windows showed the whole city sparkling below. Rose petals covered the huge bed. Champagne sat waiting in a silver bucket, but Emma Reid didn't notice any of it. She stood in front of the mirror in the dressing room. Her wide hazel eyes showed every bit of fear running through her body. She was 24 years old. The wedding dress was gone now. Her mom and all those helpers had taken it off hours ago. Now she wore a white nightgown, fancy silk with lace, probably cost more than most people made in a month. Her long brown hair fell past her shoulders. Her skin looked extra pale in the soft light. She could hear him moving around in the bedroom. Her husband, getting ready for bed, getting ready for this night that everyone had whispered about at the wedding. Emma grew up in the Reid house, one of the oldest families in New England. Rich people, important people. Her dad, Richard Reid, owned Red Pharmaceuticals. The company had been in the family forever, but lately, things were bad. Money problems, bad business choices. Her mom, Catherine, raised Emma with strict rules. Be proper. Be modest. Be a good wife. Nobody talked about what happened between husbands and wives. Just vague words about wifely duties and making your husband happy. Emma was too embarrassed to look things up online. Too scared, too ashamed. The marriage happened 6 months ago. Well, they arranged it 6 months ago. Arranged made it sound nicer than it was. Emma's parents sat her down at a formal dinner. Both families around this huge table. They told her she was marrying Nathan Cole. Nathan was 32 years old. A billionaire, built his tech company from nothing. Started with one app in his college room. Now he had thousands of employees. He needed the connections that came from marrying into old money. The Reid family needed his money. Simple as that, business dressed up as tradition. They met 5 times before the wedding. First time, that dinner. He asked basic questions. She stammered through answers. Both families watched every word. Second time, a charity party. He danced with her twice. His hand on her waist felt like fire through her dress. Third time, tea with their mothers. Talking about wedding plans, Emma and Nathan sat there like props in someone else's play. Fourth time, the engagement party. He put a huge diamond ring on her finger. She smiled for cameras, felt nothing inside. Fifth time, the rehearsal dinner. They barely spoke, just practiced walking down the aisle. Now she was his wife, legally tied to this stranger, standing in a room that felt like a beautiful prison instead of a romantic place. Emma took a deep breath. Her hands shook as she smoothed down the nightgown. She forced herself to leave the dressing room. She was raised to do her duty, to keep her promises, to make her family proud. She wouldn't be a coward, no matter how scared she felt. Nathan stood by the windows, looking out at the city. Emma's breath caught despite her fear. He was tall. Really tall. Maybe 6'2". Broad shoulders filled out his black pajama shirt. His dark hair looked messy, like he'd run his hands through it over and over. Even from behind, she could see tension in his body. When he turned at her footsteps, she felt it again. How handsome he was. Sharp jaw. Piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. A mouth like a sculpture, but his eyes surprised her. Not desire, not impatience, something that looked almost like concern. "Emma," he said, his voice deeper than she remembered, rougher, "you don't have to look so frightened. I'm not going to hurt you." She wanted to believe him, but her mother's words echoed in her head. "It will hurt the first time. All women endure it. Be brave, be quiet. It will be over quickly." Her mom made it sound like a medical procedure, not something between two people who cared about each other, but Emma and Nathan didn't care about each other. They were strangers with legal papers and family expectations. "I'm not frightened," she lied. She lifted her chin, tried to look confident, fooled nobody. Something flickered across Nathan's face. Disappointment, anger, she couldn't tell. He crossed the room slowly. She forced herself not to back away, not to show weakness. He stood close, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive, made her think of forests after rain. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed hair behind her ear, so gentle it almost hurt. Obligations. Repeated, something bitter in his voice. Is that what this is to you? A checklist item. Emma didn't know how to answer. What else was it supposed to be? They didn't marry for love. This was a transaction. The wedding night was just the final part of their agreement. Before she could answer, Nathan sighed and stepped back, creating space between them. It felt relieving and strangely disappointing at the same time. Come here, he said, pointing to the bed. Her heart hammered, but she moved forward, sat on the edge like someone in church, not on their marriage bed. Nathan sat beside her, kept space between them. For a long moment, nobody spoke. I'm going to be honest with you, Nathan finally said. Turned to look at her. This marriage might have started as business, but we're spending our lives together. I have no interest in making you miserable, and I'm certainly not forcing you into anything you're not ready for. Emma blinked, certain she heard wrong, but this is our wedding night. It's expected. Our families will ask questions if we don't. Our families can mind their own business. Nathan interrupted, steel in his voice. What happens between us in this room is nobody's concern but ours. Do you understand me? She nodded slowly, not sure she understood, afraid to admit it. Nathan studied her. Those blue eyes seemed to see every detail of her face. Have you ever been with anyone before? The question should have been rude, but his tone was matter of fact. When Emma shook her head, color flooding her cheeks, he nodded. Like he already knew. I thought so. And I'm guessing nobody prepared you beyond telling you it would hurt and you should endure it. Emma gasped. How did you know? Because I know your mother's reputation. I know how families like yours approach these things. He ran a hand through his hair, that frustrated gesture. Emma, intimacy between two people shouldn't be about endurance or obligation. It should be about connection, about trust, about both people wanting to be together. And right now, you look at me like I'm a monster about to devour you. I don't think you're a monster, she said weakly, but you are terrified of me. Not a question, when she didn't deny it. Nathan stood, walked back to the windows, his back to her. We're not doing this tonight. Relief and confusion fought inside her, but everyone expects. I don't care what everyone expects. He turned back, his face firm but not unkind. Emma, I'm a lot of things. I've made mistakes. But I will not start this marriage by forcing myself on a terrified woman who barely knows my name. We have time. We have our entire lives, apparently. One night isn't going to make a difference. Emma felt tears in her eyes. She couldn't say if they were from relief, embarrassment, or the strange disappointment from his rejection. She'd spent all day preparing herself mentally, gathered every bit of courage, and now he was saying it wasn't necessary. Part of her wanted to argue, to insist they get it over with, but a larger part, the part that had been terrified for weeks, felt like a huge weight lifted from her shoulders. So what do we do now? She asked, small voice. Nathan smiled. It transformed his face from handsome to devastating. Now we do something radical. We talk, we get to know each other. We figure out if this arrangement can become something more than a business transaction. He walked back and held out his hand. Come on. Let's order room service. Put on something more comfortable than these ridiculous pajamas and have a real conversation. What do you say? Emma took his hand, felt the warmth and strength, nodded. 20 minutes later, they'd both changed. Nathan in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looked younger, more approachable. Emma in yoga pants and oversized sweater, felt less exposed. They sat on opposite ends of the huge couch, food spread between them. Nathan ordered without looking at the menu. For the first time since this whole thing began, Emma felt like she could breathe. Tell me about yourself, Nathan said, reaching for a fry. The real you? Not the version you show our families. I'm not sure there's much difference, Emma admitted. I've always been exactly what my parents wanted. Good grades, good behavior, good reputation. I went to Wellesley because my mother went there. Studied art history because it was appropriate. Joined all the right clubs. I've never really figured out who I am beyond all that. That's depressing, Nathan said bluntly, but his tone was sympathetic. You're 24 years old. Haven't you ever wanted to rebel, do something wild, every day? Emma confessed, surprised by her honesty, but I was raised to believe duty comes before personal desire. My role is to support my family, maintain our reputation, marry well, produce heirs. Personal happiness was never part of the equation. Nathan was quiet, studying her with those blue eyes. What would you do if you could do anything? If money and family expectations weren't a factor? The question was so unexpected. Emma had to think, what would she do? She'd spent so long being who everyone else wanted. She never considered her own desires. I think, she said slowly, I would travel. I've barely left New England except for supervised trips to Europe with my parents. I'd want to see the world, experience different cultures, try new foods, meet interesting people. I'd want to take photographs. Not professional, just capturing moments that feel important. I'd want to read books that aren't on approved lists. Go to concerts, try rock climbing, maybe even get a tattoo, though I'd probably be too scared to actually do it. Why would you be scared of a tattoo after listing all those other things? Nathan asked, genuinely curious, because a tattoo is permanent. All those other things, you can do them and move on. But a tattoo stays with you forever. It's a commitment to something you chose for yourself. And I've never been very good at making choices just for me. She laughed self-consciously. That probably sounds ridiculous to someone like you. Someone like me. Someone who built an empire from nothing. Someone who clearly knows what they want and goes after it. Someone who makes decisions affecting thousands of people without second guessing. Nathan laughed, no humor in it. Emma, I second guess myself constantly. Every business decision, every investment, every hire, I lie awake wondering if I made the right call. The difference between us isn't confidence. It's that I've been forced to make choices and live with consequences since I was 18. You've had every choice made for you. That doesn't make you weak or ridiculous. It just means you're starting your journey of self-discovery a little later than some people. They talked for hours that night. The conversation flowed easier than Emma thought possible. Nathan told her about growing up poor in a small town in Ohio, his single mother working 3 jobs to keep them fed and housed, how he taught himself to code using library computers, how he developed his first app to solve a problem his mother faced at work, how it accidentally went viral and changed everything. He spoke about the pressure of sudden wealth, how people treated him differently once he had money, the isolation that came with success. He was surprisingly vulnerable, sharing failures and fears along with triumphs. Emma found herself captivated by this glimpse of the man behind the billionaire reputation. She told him about the suffocating expectations of her upbringing, the constant scrutiny from society, the fear of disappointing her parents. She confessed she'd never had a real boyfriend. The few boys who showed interest in college were quickly discouraged by her mother, who'd already been planning this arranged marriage even then. She admitted she had friends, but no one she felt truly close to. Every relationship felt like a performance, like she was playing a role instead of being herself. That's going to change, Nathan said firmly when she finished. I can't give you back the years you lost, but I can promise this marriage doesn't have to be another performance. Behind closed doors with me, you can be whoever you want. No judgment, no expectations, no pressure to be perfect. Why are you being so kind to me? Emma asked. The question burned in her mind. You could demand anything from me. Our marriage contract gives you that right. You could have insisted tonight, and there would have been nothing I could do legally. So why are you treating me like a person instead of a possession? Nathan set down his glass, met her eyes with intensity that made her breath catch. Because I was raised by a woman who taught me that respect isn't optional. It's fundamental. My mother worked herself to the bone to give me opportunities. She drilled into me from the earliest age that power without compassion is tyranny. Yes, I could treat you like a possession. Society would probably applaud me for it. Call it being a strong husband or some nonsense. But I've spent my entire adult life proving I'm better than the circumstances I came from. I'm not about to start my marriage by becoming the kind of man I've always despised. He paused, then added more softly, besides, I've been watching you today. At the wedding, during the reception, just now when you came out of that dressing room. You're brave, Emma. You're terrified, but you keep showing up. Keep trying to do what's expected even when it costs you. That takes courage, I respect. You deserve better than being treated as a means to an end. Emma felt tears spilling down her cheeks before she realized she was crying. No one had ever spoken to her like this, ever acknowledged the effort it took to maintain her composure, to fulfill her obligations despite her fears. Nathan moved closer on the couch, pulled her into his arms, a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. She stiffened initially, but he just held her, one hand rubbing gentle circles on her back, the other cradling her head against his chest. "It's okay," he murmured, "let it out. God knows this has been an overwhelming day." She cried against his chest, soaking his t-shirt. He just held her, let her process everything she'd been holding inside for months. Eventually her sobs turned to hiccups. She pulled back, embarrassed by her loss of control. But Nathan just handed her tissues from the side table, smiled at her with genuine warmth. She felt something shift in her chest. "Feel better?" he asked. "Actually, yes," she admitted, surprised it was true. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall apart on you. Don't apologize. I'd rather you fall apart honestly than maintain a perfect facade while slowly crumbling inside." He glanced at the clock, grimaced. "It's almost 3 a.m. We should probably get some sleep." The anxiety rushed back. Nathan must have seen it on her face, in the bed together. "But just sleeping, I promise. We're married, so we might as well get used to sharing a bed. But that's all we're doing tonight." "Okay." Emma nodded, relief flooding through her. They cleaned up the food, then stood awkwardly by opposite sides of the huge bed, the earlier ease suddenly gone in the face of this new intimacy. Nathan climbed in first, stayed on his side, patted the space beside him. Emma slipped under the covers, maintaining careful distance, lay rigidly on her back, staring at the ceiling. "Emma," Nathan said after a few minutes, "you're going to give yourself a neck cramp lying like that." "Relax, I'm trying," she said, heard the tension in her own voice. The mattress shifted, then Nathan was there, wrapping an arm around her waist, pulling her against him, her back pressed to his chest, his body curled around hers, a protective embrace. She should have felt trapped, threatened, but instead she felt safe, a way she hadn't since childhood. "Is this okay?" he asked, his breath warm against her ear. "Yes," she whispered, meant it. "Good. Now close your eyes and try to sleep. Tomorrow we can figure out the rest of our lives. But tonight just rest." Emma did as he suggested. To her surprise, she felt her body relaxing against his, the tension slowly draining. His heartbeat was steady against her back, his arm a solid weight around her waist. For the first time since this arranged marriage was announced, she felt something that might have been hope. Maybe this didn't have to be the disaster she feared. Maybe there was a possibility they could build something real from these business foundations. As sleep claimed her, she heard Nathan whisper something. Might have been sweet dreams, or might have been her imagination. She smiled into the darkness. When Emma woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows. She was alone in the bed. Panic seized her. Had last night been real? Had Nathan actually been kind to her? Or had she dreamed the whole conversation? Then she saw the note on his pillow. Bold, confident handwriting. Gone to handle some business calls. Breakfast will be delivered at 9. Take your time waking up. We have nowhere we need to be today. Emma clutched the note to her chest. The hope from last night bloomed into something stronger. This was real. He was real. And maybe they had a chance at building something meaningful together. The wedding night might not have gone as anyone expected. But as she lay there in the morning light, Emma found herself thinking it had gone exactly as it should have. They had their entire lives ahead of them. One night was just the beginning. 3 months passed. Emma often marveled at how much her life transformed while staying exactly the same. On the surface, to the outside world, to their families, to the society pages tracking their every appearance. Nathan and Emma Cole were the perfect couple. The billionaire tech mogul and his elegant society wife, attending charity galas, hosting dinner parties at their penthouse, presenting a united front of success and sophistication. What nobody knew, what they guarded as their most precious secret. Behind closed doors, they lived as the most intimate of roommates, not husband and wife in the traditional sense. The penthouse Nathan owned, that they owned together now, she still struggled to think of his space as hers. It occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca, a masterpiece of modern design, clean lines, floor to ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Hudson River and Manhattan skyline. When Emma first saw it, she was overwhelmed by the sheer scale. It seemed designed for entertaining hundreds, not housing 2 people. But Nathan showed her a suite of rooms he designated as hers, bedroom with attached bathroom and small sitting room, told her she could redesign them however she wanted. This was her home now. She should feel comfortable making it her own. She took him up on that offer, cautiously at first, changing small things, the bedding, adding photographs she loved. But as weeks passed and Nathan continued encouraging her self-expression, she grew bolder. Her sitting room now held a reading nook, an enormous chair positioned to catch morning light, surrounded by overflowing bookshelves filled with novels she always wanted to read but never felt she had permission to enjoy. Her bedroom was repainted from stark white to soft sage green, reminded her of spring gardens. She hung artwork she selected herself, not pieces chosen by an interior designer. It was slowly becoming her sanctuary, a physical manifestation of the person she was discovering herself to be. Nathan, true to his word from that first night, never pressured her about the physical aspects of marriage. They slept in separate bedrooms, met for breakfast each morning when schedules allowed, spent evenings together talking about everything and nothing. He introduced her to his world of technology and business, explaining his ventures, asking for her opinions with genuine interest, not the patronizing tone she expected. She opened up about her own dreams and aspirations, the person she wanted to become now that she had freedom to explore her identity. What surprised Emma most was how naturally their friendship developed. Nathan had a wicked sense of humor he kept hidden from most people, a tendency to make sarcastic observations about pompous society figures, had her stifling laughter at inappropriate moments. He was also incredibly thoughtful, remembered she preferred her coffee with just a touch of cream, ensured her favorite flowers were always in the penthouse, gave her space when she needed it, but somehow always knew when she needed company. She found herself wanting to know everything about him, asking questions about his childhood, his business philosophy, his hopes for the future. They fell into comfortable routines, Saturday mornings, sleeping and then making elaborate breakfast together, Nathan proving surprisingly skilled at cooking, Emma providing entertainment with her complete lack of culinary talent, Sunday evenings, watching movies in the home theater, debating different films with the intensity of critics, weekday evenings, working side by side in his office, Nathan reviewing business documents, Emma taking online courses in photography and digital marketing, discovering talents she never knew she had. But beneath all this comfortable domesticity ran an undercurrent of tension neither acknowledged directly. Emma caught Nathan watching her sometimes, with intensity that made her skin flush with heat. She became hyper, aware of every accidental touch, his hand on her lower back moving through crowded rooms, his fingers brushing hers when he handed her coffee, the way his body radiated warmth when they sat close on the couch. She found herself thinking about it at odd moments, remembering the feel of his arms around her that wedding night, wondering what it might be like if they took their relationship beyond friendship. The catalyst for change came on a Tuesday afternoon in late November. Emma's father called with news that sent her world spinning. Reed Pharmaceuticals was facing a hostile takeover. If successful, it would mean the end of 3 generations of family legacy. Her father called in tears. She'd never seen him cry before, hoped never to see it again. He explained he'd made poor investments. The company's patents were expiring. No new products in the pipeline. He gambled and lost on a merger that fell through. The company her great-grandfather built was about to be dismantled and sold for parts. Emma ended the call, sat frozen in her sitting room, unable to process the magnitude of what she'd learned. This was supposed to have been prevented by her marriage to Nathan. The whole point was securing funding and connections for Reed Pharmaceuticals, but the legal agreements were structured carefully, protections for both sides. Nathan agreed to provide business consultation and introductions to potential partners, but he wasn't obligated to simply hand over money to bail out a failing company. Emma couldn't bring herself to ask him to do more than he'd already agreed to. Couldn't bear the thought of reducing their growing friendship to a financial transaction. She didn't realize she was crying until tears dripped off her chin onto her hands. The weight of failure pressed down. She'd married this man, uprooted her entire life, given up any possibility of finding love for herself, and it had all been for nothing. Her father would lose everything, Their family name, already tarnished by financial difficulties, would become synonymous with failure, and it was her fault for not being valuable enough, for not giving Nathan a reason to invest more heavily in her family's company. Emma. Nathan's voice came from the doorway. She looked up to see him standing there, expression of alarm. She hadn't heard him come home. What's wrong? What happened? She tried to speak, tried to explain, but words wouldn't come properly. She just sobbed harder. All the stress and fear and disappointment of 3 months finally breaking through the careful control she'd maintained. Nathan crossed the room in 3 long strides, pulled her into his arms. This time she didn't hesitate. Clung to him, buried her face in his chest. Her whole body shook with crying. "Tell me," he said quietly, his hand stroking her hair with infinite gentleness. "Whatever it is, we'll fix it. Just tell me what's wrong." Between gasping breaths, she explained. The phone call, the hostile takeover, her father's desperation. Nathan listened without interrupting. His arms tightened around her as the full picture emerged. When she finally fell silent, exhausted from crying, he pulled back just enough to look at her face, used his thumbs to wipe away tears. "Look at me," he commanded gently. She raised her eyes to his. "This is not your fault. Do you understand? None of this is your fault. Your father made business decisions that didn't work out. That happens. It doesn't reflect on you in any way. But I married you to prevent this," she protested weakly. "That was the whole point." "No," Nathan said firmly. "You married me because your parents told you to, because you thought you had no choice, because you were trying to be a good daughter. But your father's company is not your responsibility to save. You don't owe anyone that much of yourself. Your family will survive this. They might have to downsize, adjust to a different lifestyle, but they'll survive. People do it every day." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to maintain eye contact. "Emma, I need you to hear what I'm about to say. I married you for business reasons, yes, but over these 3 months you've become my friend, one of the only real friends I have actually, and I protect my friends, so I'm going to help your father, not because of our marriage contract, but because it matters to you. You don't have to do that," she whispered. Hope flared in her chest. "I know I don't have to. I want to." He smiled. Something in his expression made her heart skip a beat. "Besides, I've been looking at Reed Pharmaceuticals' portfolio. Your father might not see it, but there's real potential there. With the right management and strategic investments, that company could be very profitable. So this isn't charity. It's a business opportunity that happens to also help someone I care about." "Someone I care about?" The words echoed in Emma's mind long after Nathan settled her on the couch with a blanket and tea. Long after he disappeared into his office to start making calls to his team of lawyers and business advisors. He cared about her, not as a business partner or social prop, but as a person. The realization made something warm unfurl in her chest, something that felt dangerous and wonderful all at once. Over the next several days, Emma watched in awe as Nathan transformed into the ruthless businessman his reputation suggested. He worked 18-hour days, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and takeout, orchestrating a counterattack against the hostile takeover. He brought in forensic accountants to review Reed Pharmaceuticals' books, identifying areas of strength her father overlooked. He leveraged connections to broker deals with major hospital networks for distribution. He personally called every board member, painting a vision of the company's future so compelling several changed their votes about the proposed takeover. Emma tried to give him space to work, but she found herself drawn to his office in evenings, bringing him dinner. Sitting quietly in the corner while he worked, sometimes he talked through problems with her, using her as a sounding board. She protested she didn't understand high finance, but he insisted her outside perspective was valuable. She asked questions that made him reconsider assumptions he'd taken for granted. She began seeing the brilliant mind that built his empire, the way he could see patterns and opportunities where others saw only obstacles. On the 5th day, after a marathon video conference with the board and would-be acquirers, Nathan emerged from his office at midnight, looking exhausted but triumphant. Emma had been dozing on the living room couch. Waiting for news, she jolted awake at his footsteps. "It's done," he announced, collapsing onto the couch beside her. "The takeover is blocked. I've also convinced your father to bring in a new management team to work alongside him. People I trust who can help stabilize the company long term. Reed Pharmaceuticals is going to survive, Emma. Your family legacy is safe." She stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "You saved it. You actually saved it." "We saved it," he corrected. "Your father's company has good bones. It just needed someone to believe in it again." He looked at her with those intense blue eyes. She saw exhaustion there, but also something else, something heated. "You should call your parents. Let them know the good news." But Emma didn't reach for her phone. Instead, she found herself leaning closer to Nathan. Drawn by a force she couldn't name, he'd done this for her, spent nearly a week working himself to exhaustion. Used his resources and connections and brilliant mind, all for her, because she mattered to him. "Thank you," she whispered. And then before she could lose her nerve, she kissed him. It was her first kiss, real kiss, not the chaste peck they'd exchanged at their wedding ceremony. It was everything and nothing like she'd imagined. His lips were soft against hers, but there was nothing soft about the way he responded. One hand came up to cup the back of her neck, the other wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. Emma gasped against his mouth. He took advantage of her parted lips to deepen the kiss, his tongue sliding against hers in a way that made heat pool low in her belly. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Emma," he said, his voice rough in a way that made her shiver. "We should talk about this." "I don't want to talk," she heard herself say. Surprised by her own boldness, "I've been thinking about this for weeks, about you, about us, about what it might be like if we were really married, not just on paper. You're sure?" He pulled back to look at her face, searching for any sign of doubt or fear. 3 months ago, you were terrified of me. I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything because I helped your father. This has nothing to do with obligation," Emma said. Realized it was true. "Nathan, over these 3 months you've become my best friend, the person I most want to talk to, the person whose opinion matters most, the person I think about first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and lately I've been thinking about you in other ways too, wondering what it would be like to touch you, to be touched by you. I want this. I want you, if you want me too." The kiss he gave her then was her answer. Fierce and possessive and tender all at once. He stood, pulling her up with him. For a moment they just looked at each other, both knowing if they took this step, everything would change. Emma felt a flutter of nerves, memory of that wedding night, her mother's warnings about pain. But when she looked at Nathan, she saw only patient affection and barely restrained desire. "I need you to promise me something," Nathan said, his hands framing her face. "If anything hurts, if you want to stop at any point, you tell me immediately. This only works if we're both all in. If there's complete honesty between us. Can you promise me that?" "I promise." She said, meant it. He took her hand, led her to his bedroom. First time she'd been in his private space since moving into the penthouse. It was simpler than she expected. Minimal furniture and decorations. Almost Spartan. But she barely had time to process her surroundings before he was kissing her again. His hands moving to the hem of her sweater. What followed was nothing like Emma had been led to expect. Nathan took his time removing her clothes, piece by piece, murmuring praise against her skin, telling her she was beautiful, that he'd wanted this for longer than he cared to admit, that he would make it good for her when she stood before him in just her underwear. Self-conscious and vulnerable, he took several minutes just looking at her, his eyes dark with desire. But also with tenderness. "You're sure?" he asked one more time, giving her every chance to back out. "I trust you," she said. Those 3 words seemed to affect him profoundly. He closed his eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. When he opened them again, there was determination that made her pulse race. He laid her down on his bed, proceeded to map every inch of her body with his hands and mouth, learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, what made her arch into his touch. He was patient beyond measure, bringing her to the edge of pleasure multiple times before finally positioning himself above her. When he entered her, there was discomfort, her body resisting this new intrusion. She tensed despite her best efforts to relax. Nathan stilled immediately. "Breathe," he coached. "Just breathe. We can stop. We can try again later, whatever you need. Don't stop," she managed. "Just go slow." He did, moving with exquisite care, checking in with her constantly, his own need clearly secondary to her comfort. The initial discomfort gradually eased, replaced by unfamiliar sensations that weren't quite pleasure, but weren't pain either. They paused several times, Nathan holding her and kissing her until she relaxed again, before continuing. It took patience and trust, and more than a little awkwardness. But finally, they found a rhythm that worked for both of them. When it was over, Emma found herself crying again, but this time the tears were complicated. Relief that it hadn't been as awful as she feared. Tenderness at how gentle Nathan had been. Overwhelmed at the intimacy they'd just shared, and something else she was afraid to name. Nathan held her through it all, his arms strong around her, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "Are you okay?" he asked when her tears had subsided. "Did I hurt you?" "No," she assured him. "Well, a little, but not like I thought. It was just a lot. A good lot, I think, but still a lot." He kissed the top of her head. "We'll get better at it. These things take practice, communication. But Emma, I need you to know that wasn't just physical for me. It meant something. You mean something to me." She lifted her head to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his expression. "You mean something to me too. I think I've been falling for you for weeks now. Maybe since that first night when you held me and told me we had time. I just didn't want to admit it to myself, because it seemed impossible. We were supposed to be a business arrangement. We were, and Nathan agreed. But somewhere along the way when I wasn't paying attention, you became real to me. Not my wife on paper, but the woman I want to come home to every day. The person whose laugh I want to hear. Whose opinion I value. Whose happiness matters more than my own." He paused, then said the words she'd been simultaneously hoping for and dreading. "I love you, Emma. I didn't plan to, didn't expect to, but I do, completely. I love you too," she whispered. Saying the words felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "When did this happen? How did we get here?" "I don't know," he admitted with a laugh. "But I'm not complaining, though I have to say, this is going to make family dinners incredibly awkward. Our parents are going to be so smug about the success of their matchmaking." Emma laughed too, the tension breaking. They spent the rest of the night talking and learning each other in new ways, building on the foundation they'd laid over the previous 3 months, as dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Emma found herself thinking that this arranged marriage, this business transaction that was supposed to be purely practical, had somehow transformed into the greatest gift she could have imagined. "So what happens now?" she asked, her head resting on Nathan's chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "Now we figure out how to actually be married," he said. "The real kind where we're partners in everything. We learn each other's quirks and habits. We have our first fight and figure out how to resolve it. We make plans for our future, not the future our families imagined for us, but the one we want to build together." He tilted her face up to his, kissing her softly. "And we take it one day at a time, adjusting as we go, being patient with ourselves and each other." "Sound good, sounds perfect," Emma said. Meant it with every fiber of her being. 3 months ago, she'd stood in a wedding dress, terrified of the stranger she was marrying. Now she lay in his arms, in love with the man who'd somehow become her home. She couldn't imagine wanting to be anywhere else. 6 months into their marriage, Emma Cole stood in front of the mirror in the master bathroom, their bathroom now. Since she'd moved her things into Nathan's bedroom 3 months ago, she stared at the pregnancy test in her hand. A mixture of wonder and terror. 2 pink lines, pregnant. She was carrying Nathan's baby, a life they'd created together. And she had no idea how to feel about it. They'd talked about children in abstract terms, the way newlyweds often do, but always as something in the distant future. After all, they were still learning how to be husband and wife in the fullest sense. still building their relationship on a foundation that started with business and evolved into love. A baby would change everything, would force them to grow up even faster than they already had, would test the strength of their still new marriage in ways Emma wasn't sure she was ready for. But as she looked at those two pink lines, something else stirred in her chest: excitement. She and Nathan had created something together, something that was theirs alone, something that had nothing to do with business arrangements or family expectations. This baby would be a product of the love they'd found in each other, a tangible representation of how far they'd come from that terrified wedding night 6 months ago. The question was, how would Nathan react? Would he be happy, overwhelmed, resentful of the timing? They'd been careful, using protection even after that first time, but apparently they hadn't been careful enough. Or perhaps fate had decided to intervene in their carefully planned lives once again. She heard the front door open, Nathan returning from his morning run. She made a split-second decision. She wouldn't hide this from him, wouldn't let fear make her keep secrets. They'd built their relationship on honesty and trust. She wasn't about to compromise that now. She tucked the pregnancy test into her pocket, went to meet him in the kitchen. He was drinking water, scrolling through messages on his phone. His t-shirt damp with sweat in a way that still made her heart skip a beat. "Even after months of marriage, good run?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. He looked up and smiled. The smile he reserved just for her, the one that made his entire face soften. "Great run, though I think I'm getting old. My knees are definitely protesting more than they used to." He set down his phone, pulled her into his arms, apparently not caring that he was sweaty. "How was your morning? Did you finish that photography project you were working on?" "Almost," she said, leaning into his embrace. "Nathan, we need to talk about something." The change in him was immediate. His body tensed. When he pulled back to look at her face, his expression was concerned. That's never a good way to start a conversation. "What's wrong? Is it your father again? Because if he's pressuring you about something—" "It's not my father," she interrupted. "It's this." She pulled the pregnancy test from her pocket, handed it to him, watching his face carefully as he looked down at it. "I took it this morning. I've been feeling off for the past week. I thought maybe it was just stress, but—" Nathan stared at the test in his hand. What felt like an eternity, Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she waited for his reaction, preparing herself for anything. Anger, rejection, demands that she get rid of it. What she wasn't prepared for was the sight of tears welling up in his eyes as he looked from the test to her face and back again. "We're having a baby." His voice cracked on the last word. Emma felt her own eyes filling with tears. "Yes, I know we weren't planning this. It's probably terrible timing with everything going on at both our companies. I'm scared out of my mind because I have no idea how to be a mother." She didn't get to finish her rambling confession. Nathan had dropped the test on the counter, pulled her into a crushing embrace. His face buried in her hair. She could feel his body shaking, realized he was crying, actually crying. Something she'd never seen him do before. "Nathan, are you okay? Talk to me." He pulled back, his face wet with tears. But his smile was incandescent. "I'm so happy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Emma, I'm so incredibly, impossibly happy. I know we didn't plan this, but I can't imagine better news. We're going to have a baby, you and me, a family." Relief flooded through her so intensely, her knees went weak. Nathan must have felt it. He guided her to a chair at the kitchen island, knelt in front of her, took her hands in his. "Did you think I would be angry?" he asked gently, reading her expression with accuracy that came from months of learning each other. "I didn't know," she admitted. "We're still so new at this, at being married and being in love and being partners. A baby feels like such an enormous responsibility. What if we're not ready? What if we mess everything up?" Nathan squeezed her hands. "Emma, nobody is ever really ready to be a parent. My mother certainly wasn't. She was 19 and alone when she had me, barely more than a kid herself, but she figured it out, and we will too, together. Because that's what we do now. We figure things out together." He pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Besides, I've been watching you over these past 6 months. The way you've thrown yourself into learning new things. The way you've grown into your own person. The way you handle challenges with grace and determination. You're going to be an amazing mother." "You really think so?" she asked in a small voice. "I know so, and I'm going to do everything in my power to be the kind of father my child deserves. The kind who's present, who's engaged, who puts family first even when business demands otherwise." He stood, pulled her into another embrace. "Thank you for this gift, for this chance to build a family with you. I know I'm probably not expressing it well, but Emma, this is everything I didn't know I wanted." They held each other in the kitchen, both crying happy tears, until Nathan insisted on making her breakfast. "You're eating for 2 now after all." He proceeded to fuss over her in a way that was both endearing and slightly annoying. Over the next few weeks, as they adjusted to the reality of impending parenthood, that fussing only intensified. Nathan was constantly researching pregnancy nutrition, baby safety standards, parenting techniques, approaching fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to his business ventures. Emma found it simultaneously sweet and overwhelming, finally having to sit him down and explain she needed him to be her husband first and a pregnancy manual second. But as summer turned to fall and her pregnancy progressed, Emma found herself falling even more deeply in love with this man who'd been a stranger on their wedding night. He came to every doctor's appointment, holding her hand through early ultrasounds where they heard their baby's heartbeat for the first time. He took over more household responsibilities as her energy waned in the 2nd trimester, cooking dinner, managing their social calendar without complaint. He talked to her growing belly every night, telling their unborn child about his day, making ridiculous promises about trips they would take and things they would build together. Their families predictably were overjoyed by the news. Emma's mother cried, immediately began planning a nursery, sending Emma dozens of Pinterest boards filled with design ideas, ranging from traditional to completely outlandish. Her father, now much more stable thanks to Nathan's intervention with Reed Pharmaceuticals, actually hugged Nathan, called him son, a display of affection that shocked everyone present. Nathan's mother, whom Emma had met only a handful of times but instantly loved for her down-to-earth warmth, flew in from Ohio. Spent a week with them, sharing stories about Nathan as a child, offering practical advice far more helpful than Catherine Reed's vague pronouncements about proper child-rearing. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The pregnancy brought morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that made Emma feel like she was moving through molasses, emotional volatility that had her crying over television commercials and snapping at Nathan for crimes as minor as breathing too loudly. Through it all, Nathan remained patient and supportive, though Emma could see the strain in his eyes during her more unreasonable moments. They had their first real fight when she was 4 months pregnant, a screaming match about something trivial that neither could remember afterward. It terrified them both, but they worked through it, learning how to communicate better, how to give each other space when needed, how to apologize and mean it. It was during this period of adjustment and growth that the real test of their marriage arrived, not in the form of pregnancy complications, but through an unexpected threat to everything they'd built. Nathan's company, Cole Technologies, had been in negotiations to acquire a smaller tech firm that would expand their reach into artificial intelligence. The deal was worth billions, would cement Nathan's position as one of the major players in the tech industry. Everything had been proceeding smoothly until Victoria Chen appeared. Victoria was Nathan's ex-fiancée from years ago, before his company had really taken off, before he'd become the billionaire he was now. They met in graduate school, dated seriously for 3 years, even been engaged briefly before Victoria broke things off, claiming she needed to focus on her own career in venture capital. Nathan told Emma about her during one of their late-night conversations, describing her as ambitious, brilliant, ultimately incompatible with his vision for his life, He thought she was completely out of his life. Residing in San Francisco, married to another tech executive, but Victoria had returned to New York. Newly divorced, now a partner at one of the major venture capital firms involved in the acquisition deal. She approached Nathan at a business dinner, one Emma had skipped due to pregnancy fatigue, according to Nathan, who came home that night looking troubled. She'd made it clear she was interested in rekindling their relationship. He shut her down immediately, explaining he was happily married, not interested in revisiting the past. But Victoria hadn't taken the rejection well. Within a week, rumors began circulating in business circles and on gossip websites that the Cole marriage was a sham, an arranged business deal where the couple maintained separate lives and separate bedrooms. There were anonymous quotes from inside sources, claiming Nathan had only married Emma for access to her family's pharmaceutical connections. That Emma was a virgin bride who'd never consummated the marriage, that they were barely more than roommates living in the same space. The timing was clearly calculated to damage Nathan's reputation, right as the acquisition deal was reaching its critical phase. Potential investors didn't want to work with someone perceived as dishonest or using marriage as a business transaction. Emma was devastated. The stories contained just enough truth. Yes, their marriage started as a business arrangement. Yes, she'd been a virgin on their wedding night. Yes, they'd taken time to develop their physical relationship. She couldn't dismiss them entirely, but they twisted that truth into something ugly, something that completely ignored the love and partnership she and Nathan had built over the past months. "How do we fight this?" she asked Nathan one evening as they sat in his office, reviewing the latest round of tabloid stories and social media speculation. "Everything they're saying is technically true, or at least was true at the beginning. How do we prove that things changed, that what we have now is real?" Nathan ran his hands through his hair in frustration, a gesture she'd come to recognize as his tell when he was deeply stressed. "I don't know. We could issue a statement, but that might just add fuel to the fire. We could sue for defamation, but that would drag everything out for months and give the story even more attention. Or we could just ignore it and hope it blows over. But that's not really working so far. What does your lawyer say?" "That we need to be prepared for things to get worse before they get better. Victoria apparently has a vendetta. She's using her connections to plant stories everywhere. She's also convinced some of the board members at Raid Pharmaceuticals to question the legitimacy of our marriage, suggesting maybe the investment deal should be re-examined since it was based on false pretenses." Emma felt ice in her veins. "She's going after my father's company. She's going after everything," Nathan confirmed grimly. "She wants to hurt me, and she's figured out that the best way to do that is through you and your family. I'm so sorry, Emma. I never thought my past would come back to haunt us like this." "This isn't your fault," Emma said firmly, though she felt anything but firm inside. "Victoria is the one spreading lies. She's the one trying to destroy what we've built. We can't let her win, but how do we stop her? That's what I can't figure out. Everything we do just seems to make it worse." They sat in silence for a long moment, both lost in their own thoughts, until Emma felt something flutter in her belly. The baby moving, a sensation that had become familiar over the past few weeks, but still filled her with wonder every time. She placed her hand over her stomach. The movement happened again, stronger this time, Nathan noticed. Immediately moved closer, placing his hand beside hers. "Does it hurt?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "No, it feels weird but not bad, like butterflies I guess, but stronger." She looked up at him, seeing the worry and love in his eyes. Suddenly, she knew what they had to do. "Nathan, we fight her with the truth, not the partial truth she's spreading, but the whole truth. We tell our story, all of it, how we started as strangers in an arranged marriage, how we were scared and uncertain, how we built something real from those shaky foundations. We show people that love doesn't have to look like a fairy tale to be genuine. You want to go public with everything?" Nathan asked, clearly uncertain. "Emma, that means exposing parts of our lives that are deeply personal. Your virginity, our separate bedrooms, all of it. Are you really comfortable with that?" "I'm comfortable with the truth," she said. "I'm not comfortable with letting Victoria twist our story into something ugly. Yes, we started as an arrangement, but we're ending as partners, as lovers, as parents, to be. That's the story that matters. That's the story we need to tell." Over the next week, they carefully crafted their response. Nathan hired a top public relations firm, and OTATEMENT, rather than having it sanitized by professionals. They debated every word, every detail, struggling to find the balance between honesty and privacy. Finally, they scheduled a press conference, something Nathan rarely did, preferring to let his work speak for itself, prepared to lay their marriage bare for public consumption. The day of the press conference, Emma felt sick with nerves that had nothing to do with pregnancy. She stood backstage at the hotel conference room they'd rented. Nathan's hand clasped firmly in hers, while reporters filed in and cameras were set up. She was 5 months pregnant now, her belly clearly visible in the dress she'd chosen specifically to make her condition obvious. She felt vulnerable in a way she'd never experienced before. "We don't have to do this," Nathan said quietly, giving her one last chance to back out. "We can just ignore all of it. Wait for the next scandal to come along and distract everyone." "Yes, we do," Emma replied, squeezing his hand. "We do this for us, for our baby, for everyone out there who's been told that love has to look a certain way or it isn't real. We tell our truth." They walked out onto the small stage together. The room fell silent. Nathan approached the microphone first, his posture confident despite the tension Emma could feel radiating from him. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I'm sure you're wondering why I called this press conference when I normally avoid these kinds of events. The truth is, my wife and I have had our privacy invaded and our relationship misrepresented in the press. We've decided it's time to set the record straight." He proceeded to tell their story. Emma was amazed by his eloquence. By the way, he made their journey sound both unique and universal. He admitted that yes, their marriage had been arranged by their families, that they'd barely known each other on their wedding night, that there had been no romance or love at the beginning. But then he described how they'd chosen to build something real, how they'd taken the time to become friends before becoming lovers, how they'd learned to trust each other, and ultimately to love each other deeply. When he finished, Emma stepped up to the microphone, her voice shaking slightly as she began to speak. "I want to add to what my husband has said. When I married Nathan 6 months ago, I was terrified. I'd been raised to believe that marriage was about duty and obligation, that love was something that happened in movies but not in real life. Nathan taught me differently. He showed me that respect and patience are the foundation of real intimacy, that partnership means supporting each other through challenges, that love can grow from the most unexpected beginnings." She placed her hand on her belly, the gesture captured by every camera in the room. "We're expecting our first child in 4 months. This baby was conceived in love, born from a relationship that started as a business arrangement but became so much more. Yes, our story is unconventional, but it's our story and it's real, and I'm tired of letting other people define what our marriage means or how it should look." Nathan moved to stand beside her, wrapping his arm around her waist, a gesture of solidarity and affection. "We're sharing this with you because we believe that honesty is important," he said, "but also because we want to make something clear. Our marriage, our relationship, our family, these are not up for public debate. We've told you our truth. Now we're asking you to respect our privacy going forward and let us build our life together without constant speculation and invasion." They took questions for 30 minutes, answering with remarkable candor about the early days of their marriage, about how they'd navigated the transition from strangers to partners, about their hopes for their growing family. Emma found herself relaxing as the press conference went on, discovering that sharing their truth was actually liberating rather than humiliating. Yes, some questions were invasive and uncomfortable, but they handled them together, supporting each other through the difficult moments. The response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. By that evening, their press conference had gone viral on social media. Millions of people watching and commenting. The consensus seemed to be that their honesty was refreshing in a world of carefully curated public images, that their willingness to admit their imperfect beginning made their current happiness even more meaningful. Even the business community responded well. The acquisition deal moved forward without further complications. Several board members who'd been questioning the Reed Pharmaceuticals investment publicly apologized for doubting the Coles' integrity. Victoria, according to mutual friends, had been furious. Her attempt to destroy their reputation had backfired spectacularly. Within a month, she'd quietly left New York, returned to San Francisco, her own reputation damaged by her vindictive behavior. Nathan never spoke to her again. Emma was more than happy to leave that chapter firmly in the past. The months that followed were a blur of preparations for the baby, continued growth in both their companies, deepening intimacy in their marriage. Emma's pregnancy progressed normally, though she had to endure the final trimester during a sweltering New York summer that made her feel like she was constantly melting. Nathan was attentive to the point of being overbearing, finally backing off only when Emma threatened to divorce him if he asked one more time if she was drinking enough water. Their daughter, they'd found out the sex at the 20-week ultrasound and decided not to keep it secret, was born on a February morning, after 16 hours of labor that tested both of them in ways they hadn't anticipated. Emma had opted for an epidural after the first few hours, much to her mother's disapproval, but with Nathan's full support. He stayed with her through the entire ordeal, holding her hand during contractions, wiping her face with cool cloths, never once complaining when she squeezed his hand so hard she left bruises. When the doctor finally placed their daughter in Emma's arms, both of them cried. She was perfect, tiny and red, faced and absolutely perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that looked like they might turn blue like her father's. They'd chosen the name Sophie, after Nathan's mother, whose strength and determination had shaped the man Emma loved. Sophie Emma Cole, a name that honored both sides of their family while establishing her own identity. The first weeks of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Neither of them knew what they were doing. Despite all the books they'd read and classes they'd taken, Sophie cried at unpredictable times, refused to sleep for more than 2 hours at a stretch, seemed to have an uncanny ability to need a diaper change at the most inconvenient moments. But she was also miraculous. Every tiny smile, every small sound, every moment of watching her sleep felt like a gift they didn't deserve. Nathan proved to be a natural father in ways that surprised them both. He took paternity leave from his company, something almost unheard of for a CEO, threw himself into parenting with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He learned to change diapers with impressive speed, figured out the exact rocking motion that would soothe Sophie when she was fussy, could usually tell what different cries meant before Emma could. He also took over most household responsibilities during those early weeks, insisting Emma needed to rest and recover from childbirth. On a spring evening, when Sophie was 2 months old, Emma found herself sitting in the nursery rocking chair, her daughter asleep against her chest. Nathan stood in the doorway watching them with an expression of such profound love that it took her breath away. "What are you thinking?" she asked quietly, not wanting to wake the baby. He came into the room, knelt beside the chair, running one finger gently along Sophie's soft cheek. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. A year ago, I was a workaholic billionaire with more money than sense and no real personal life to speak of. Now I have you and her and a family I never knew I wanted so desperately. I'm thinking about how close we came to missing this. If you'd refused the arranged marriage, if I'd insisted on our wedding night instead of giving us time, if we'd let Victoria destroy what we were building, any of those things could have prevented us from getting here. But we did get here," Emma said, reaching down to take his hand. "We made it together, despite all the obstacles and all the reasons we shouldn't have worked. Emma, I need you to know something. When I married you, I thought I was making a smart business decision. I thought I was setting myself up for social advantages and strategic partnerships. I never expected to find my soulmate, never expected to discover that the person I was legally bound to would become the person I couldn't imagine living without. I know, she said softly. Because I feel the same way. You were supposed to be an obligation, a sacrifice I made for my family. Instead, you became my home. Nathan stood, leaned down to kiss her forehead, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. Should we put her in the crib? You need to sleep too. In a minute. I just want to hold her a little longer. He smiled, settled onto the floor beside the rocking chair, his head resting against her leg. They sat together in peaceful silence. Their daughter slept. City lights twinkled beyond the nursery windows. In that moment, Emma realized this was what forever looked like. Not dramatic declarations or grand gestures, but quiet moments of connection, shared responsibility, the daily choice to show up for each other, even when it was hard. 5 years later, Emma stood in the same penthouse, though it looked quite different now. The pristine museum, like quality that had characterized Nathan's bachelor pad, had been replaced with the comfortable chaos of a home with children. Yes, children, plural. Sophie now had a little brother, Liam, who was 2 years old and currently destroying a tower of blocks in the living room, while his sister tried unsuccessfully to teach him about structural engineering. Emma had just finished a Zoom call with the team at Reed Pharmaceuticals, where she now served as Chief Innovation Officer, a position Nathan had encouraged her to pursue once she'd recovered from Sophie's birth. She'd discovered a real talent for bridging the gap between traditional pharmaceutical research and modern technology. Under her leadership, the company had launched several successful products that combined both fields. Her father had been skeptical at first. Women in her family didn't typically work in the business, but she'd proven herself repeatedly. Now he relied on her insights almost more than his own. Nathan was out running errands, giving her a rare few hours of somewhat quiet time with the kids. She looked at her children, at the home they'd built together, at the life that had grown from such unlikely beginnings, felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Their story wasn't perfect. They still fought sometimes, still struggled with balancing work and family, still had moments of doubt and frustration. But they faced everything together. With the foundation of trust and respect they'd built that first night when Nathan had chosen her comfort over his own desires. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, she found a young couple standing in the hallway. Looking nervous and uncertain, the woman was clearly pregnant, maybe 6 or 7 months along. The man had his arm around her waist in a protective gesture Emma recognized. "Mrs. Cole," the woman asked tentatively. "I'm so sorry to bother you at home, but we're here to meet with your husband about a potential business partnership. I'm Rebecca Chen. This is my husband David Martinez. We run a biotech startup." Emma interrupted. "Chen, are you related to Victoria Chen?" Rebecca winced. "She's my cousin, but please don't hold that against us. We have nothing to do with her personally. Our business proposal is completely legitimate. We just need someone to give us a chance." Mr. Cole agreed to at least hear us out. Emma studied the young couple, seeing the hope and fear in their eyes, the way they stood together as a united front against the world. They reminded her so much of herself and Nathan in those early days, trying to build something meaningful, facing skepticism and doubt, but refusing to give up. She made a decision. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "Nathan should be back soon. But while we wait, why don't you tell me about your project? I have some experience in the pharmaceutical space. I might be able to offer some insights." The couple entered, began explaining their vision, a combination of traditional medicine and AI-driven diagnostics that could revolutionize patient care. Emma found herself drawn into the conversation. Rebecca was brilliant and passionate. David provided grounded business sense and practical applications. They were rough around the edges, still learning how to present their ideas effectively, but the core concept was solid. When Nathan arrived home an hour later, he found Emma, Rebecca, and David huddled around the dining table. covered in laptops and printouts, deep in discussion about patent law and FDA approval processes, while Sophie entertained Liam by reading him picture books in the corner. He raised an eyebrow at Emma, who grinned and mouthed, "I'll explain later." The meeting went well, so well that Nathan agreed to invest in their startup on the spot. Much to the couple's tearful gratitude, as Emma was showing them out, Rebecca paused at the door. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said hesitantly. "I saw your press conference years ago, when you and Mr. Cole talked about your arranged marriage and how you built something real from it. My husband and I weren't arranged exactly, but we got married young because of the pregnancy. Sometimes I worry we didn't have enough time to really know each other before we jumped into this. How did you make it work? How did you go from strangers to..." This, she gestured around at the home, the children, the life Emma had built. Emma thought about how to answer, wanting to give these young people something helpful without making it sound easy or inevitable. "Honestly, we made it work by being honest with each other. Even when that honesty was uncomfortable, we gave each other room to grow and change. We chose each other every day, not just once at a wedding ceremony, and we were patient with ourselves and with each other while we figured out who we were, both as individuals and as a couple." "And the physical stuff?" Rebecca asked, blushing. "If you don't mind me asking, it's just that we're still figuring that out. It's awkward. I feel like nobody talks about how marriage isn't automatically easy just because you love each other." Emma glanced at Nathan, who nodded his permission to share. "The physical intimacy took time for us," she said honestly. "Our first attempt didn't go well because I was too scared and we didn't know each other well enough. But Nathan was patient. We built trust first. When we finally did connect physically, it was because we'd already connected emotionally. My advice, don't rush it. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to be perfect right away. Give yourselves permission to be awkward and uncertain while you learn each other." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." After the couple left, Nathan pulled Emma into his arms. "That was kind of you, and brilliant, by the way. I looked at their financials while you were talking. They're actually a solid investment even without the personal connection." "I know," Emma said smugly. "I'm not just a pretty face, you know." "Oh, I'm very aware," he murmured, kissing her neck in a way that still made her shiver even after 5 years of marriage. "The kids are occupied. Want to sneak off for a few minutes? Nathan Cole, are you trying to seduce your wife in the middle of the afternoon? Is it working?" She laughed. "Kissed him properly, always. But let me get the kids settled with a movie first. Some things are worth the wait." As Emma herded their children toward the entertainment room, she reflected on how far they'd come. From that terrified virgin bride to a confident woman, mother and business partner, who knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to reach for it. From a stranger, she barely knew, to the man whose arms felt like home, whose laugh could brighten her worst days, whose partnership had given her the courage to become herself. Their story started with pain and fear and obligation. But it became something beautiful, not despite those difficult beginnings, but perhaps because of them. They'd learned that love isn't always instantaneous, that intimacy takes patience and trust, that forever isn't a single moment, but a series of choices made over and over again. As she settled on the couch with Liam on one side and Sophie on the other, Nathan joining them moments later to wrap his arms around all three of them, Emma thought about that young couple who just left. She hoped they made it, hoped they found what she and Nathan had found. But even if they didn't, even if their story ended differently, she hoped they at least gave themselves the chance to try, to build something meaningful from whatever foundation they'd been given, because in the end, that was what mattered. Not how you started, but what you chose to build, not the perfect beginning, but the willingness to show up day after day and do the work of loving someone well. Not the fairy tale, but the real, messy, beautiful truth of two people choosing each other over and over again, till forever became not just a promise, but a reality.